Hello, friends. I want to tell you my story. This is going to sound cliche, but I've always been different. I noticed it when I was 5, though I couldn't quite explain it then. People around me always laughed, cried, got angry, etc. I could mimic it well, but I never felt it. I remember one moment clearly. I was 7 years old, sitting in the basement of a church. Our youth pastor, a dull-eyed man who reeked of coffee and sweat, asked a simple question: "Do you love your parents?" Without hesitation, every single hand shot up. Except mine, of course. I looked around in confusion. I didn't understand the question. Love? I knew the word, of course. People in movies said it, books talked about it. But to me, it meant nothing. I had no frame of reference. I raised my hand slowly, carefully, because I knew I was supposed to. But that moment stuck with me. Why did they all feel something I didn't? That was the first time I realized there was something wrong with me. Or maybe something was wrong with them. Regardless, I felt like I wasn't human. Most people are ruled by emotions. Happiness, guilt, sadness. I wasn't. Except for when I felt something extreme. I was numb. A void. And I hated that emptiness. But then, I found a way to fill the void. It started with an accident. There was this girl in my friend group, Sarah. She had a crush on me. Always standing too close, laughing too hard at my jokes. It was annoying. Suffocating. I needed her gone. But I couldn't just tell her to leave. That would make me the bad guy, and I happen to value my reputation quite a bit. So, I found another way. I'd sigh and say, "Sarah was talking about you the other day, but forget it. I don't want to start drama." I'd let their paranoia fill in the blanks. An eye roll when she spoke, a shift in tone when I mentioned her name. Soon, they were talking about her on their own. She's so clingy, she's always in everyone's business. They turned on her without realizing it. It worked better than I expected. Within a week, they stopped inviting her to places. She couldn't sit with us at lunch, no one spoke to her during study hall. The way she looked at me the last time we saw each other hurt. Desperate for me to stand up for her. It was almost funny. She had no idea it was me. That was the moment I realized what power felt like. The rush in knowing I caused everything. That I was the reason why she was alone. And then no one blamed me. Not even my victim. It was intoxicating. One of the first times I had felt my emotions so intensely. And after that, I had no choice. It's not like it's my fault I was born like this. If I were normal, I wouldn't have to resort to such tactics. But I'm not. So I do. After Sarah, it was easy. I picked my targets carefully. People who trusted easily. People who had something to lose. People who were lonely. I would become their friend, find their weaknesses, and then press just hard enough to watch them break. With one girl, I convinced her best friend she liked her boyfriend. The friend exposed her to the whole school, and soon she was known as a slut. A boy struggled with his grades, so I helped him get better, then I spread rumors that he cheated. I made sure nothing ever traced back to me. To this day, I haven't been caught. It only took the occasional rumor, an accidental slip of the tongue. People want to believe the worst when you give them the chance. The best part was always seeing when they understood that they were truly alone. The confusion, the panic, the helplessness. They would try to fix it, stammer out explanations, and beg their friends to listen. But no one ever did. It was amazing. And the most intoxicating part? The risk. The tightness in my chest when someone started asking questions. The spike of adrenaline when I was doubted by the occasional teacher. The knowledge that if I was caught, I would be punished. My reputation would be ruined. I would suffer the same fate I gave my victims. That thrill became my drug. And like any addict, I needed more. But like all highs, it faded too fast. So I escalated. The rumors became crueler. I wanted to see how far I could push someone. I made them cry. I made them beg. I watched as their misery deepened, testing how much a human could take mentally before they completely broke. And then, when I was 13, I made someone die. His name was Ethan. He was quiet, awkward, and lonely. The kind of kid who wore the same hoodie every day and flinched when people walked too close. He was perfect. I was crueler than usual, but I was going through puberty. Can you really blame me? I started the same way I always did, by spreading rumors about him. Ugly, vicious ones. I told people things he'd never even thought of. Things that made their faces twist in disgust. I made sure no one spoke to him. Got to the point where, if he drank from a water fountain, no one else would use it for at least 2 days. I convinced his only friend, some kid named Jake, that Ethan had been making fun of his lisp. Something he was incredibly insecure about. Jake didn't believe it at first, but after a couple more tries, he stopped sitting with Ethan at lunch. Stopped waiting for him after class. The first time I saw Ethan sitting alone, staring down at his untouched food, I felt something light up inside me. Ethan tried to fight it at first. He confronted people, his voice trembling, his hands shaking, as he denied the rumors. But the more he struggled, the worse it got. I'd see him in the hallways, his shoulders hunched, sobbing as his eyes darted around like an animal. It was pathetic, and I loved it. Usually I would have ended it there, but maybe because I was a growing boy, or maybe I was just bored. It wasn't enough, so naturally, I continued. Eventually, things turned physical. Of course, I didn't participate. I was too smart for that. But I watched. Oh, did I watch. There was a group of guys, bigger and meaner than me, who took things to a whole new level. They'd corner Ethan in the locker room right after gym, shove him into the showers fully clothed, and beat him until he couldn't stand. They'd burn him with lighters, leaving marks on his thighs and stomach. Once, they duct taped him to a chair and left him in the janitor's closet for hours. I'd hear about it later, see the videos they recorded, and I'd laugh along with everybody else. But secretly at night, I'd watch those videos in my room. Rewind, play, rewind, play. His fear, his humiliation. It was intoxicating. I hoped it would continue forever. And then, one day, he just broke. It seemed like he wasn't even there anymore. He'd just take it, his face blank, his eyes empty, like he'd given up. He didn't even cry anymore. It was almost disappointing how easy it became. But it also made me want to push harder, to see if I could get any kind of reaction out of him. A week later is when it happened. Hung himself in his bedroom. His mom found him. I remember sitting in class when they made the announcement. A teacher with red eyes, students gasping in shock, few of them crying. But me? I sat still, my pulse racing. I felt three things. I didn't feel guilt. Not then, not ever. I felt fear. I waited for someone to turn around, to accuse me, to say my name. But no one did. The second thing I felt was a strange sense of pride. Like I'd won something. I'd pushed him further than anyone could have. Sure, I didn't physically torment him. But without me, none of it would have happened. It was nice knowing that I was the reason he broke. The last thing I felt was irony. He was struggling. He should have reached out. He needed help. My classmates sobbed over him, painted him as a tragedy, blamed the world, blamed each other, but not the culprit. Not me. Never me. While Ethan had a great experience, he killed himself. I wanted to know what it was like to take a life with my own hands. So I planned. It was going to be my gift to myself for my 14th birthday. The victim had to be someone no one would miss, someone disposable. A runaway, a homeless person, a drug addict. I spent weeks watching, looking for the perfect one. Eventually, I found him. A homeless man who slept near the back of an abandoned gas station. Mid-40s, smelled like piss and vodka. Perfect. I learned his schedule, what little of it there was. He scavenged dumpsters behind the 7-Eleven in the morning, begged outside the liquor store in the afternoon, and passed out at midnight. He never spoke to anyone. No one ever spoke to him. When the night came, my hands were steady. I brought a knife, nothing too fancy, just sharp enough to get the job done. He was asleep when I got there. I pressed the blade to his throat, crouching over him, watching his eyes flutter. The second he woke up, I pressed down. He struggled, not as much as I expected, but enough to make it fun. His fingers clawed weakly at my arms, but he was slow, clumsy. I felt his pulse jump under my hand, heard the wet, gurgling noises as he tried to suck in air through a throat that was no longer working. Then, the moment his body seized, shuddered, and finally still. Silence. I stayed there for a while, just watching. The blood was warmed where it soaked into my clothes, and the smell was amazing. Metallic. Raw. But the best part was watching the stillness. The complete, perfect stillness of something that had been alive, but wasn't because of me. And then came the high. I felt awake in a way I never had before. I felt weightlessness, untouchable, like I could do anything. The world seemed shaper, colors deeper, sounds crisper. I couldn't stop smiling. I ran my fingers through my blood-soaked jeans, smearing it between my fingers. Sticky, cooling, proof. There was no regret, no doubt, only the rush, the heat, the absolute certainty that if I had never felt more alive than in that moment, I watched life drain from someone's eyes. I got rid of the body and cleaned myself up, then walked home slowly, stretching out the feeling, breathing it in. I wanted it to last. By the time I got home, The feeling already disappeared, and I was back to my normal, numb self. But I wasn't disappointed, because I knew one thing for sure. I was going to do this again. The second time was easier. Another nameless, disposable person, another night spent watching life drain from their eyes. And the high, it was just as good, just as intoxicating. For a while. But then, something changed. The third kill still felt good, but the rush didn't last as long. The warmth faded quicker, the satisfaction dulled faster. The fourth was the same, the fifth worse. It was like using drugs, each hit weaker than the last. I knew what that meant. I had to do more. Pain helped, drawing it out, making them suffer. The longer they screamed, the more I felt it. That electric, skin-piercing euphoria. I learned how to prolong it, how to keep them on the edge of death. It made the high last. It made it stronger. But even that started to fade. So I got more creative. I tried different tools, different methods. Some worked, some didn't. Some were too messy, some too quick. I learned restraint. I learned how to make them beg, how to keep them alive just long enough to see hope drain from their faces. The longer it took, the better the satisfaction. Still, no matter how much I escalated, the high always faded in the end. It was never enough. And maybe that was the best part. So that's my story. You've listened so patiently, like the good friends you are. Maybe some of you are disgusted. Maybe some of you are fascinated. Either way, you stayed. And that's almost as good as the act itself. Because, really, isn't this the same? Thrill of telling you, of confessing, the risk? It's exhilarating. That's why I'm telling you this. Because sharing my deeds, confessing, even anonymously, gives me that rush. Maybe you think I'm lying. Maybe you think this is all a sick fantasy from some attention-starved freak. Or maybe you believe me. Either way, I've enjoyed this. Goodbye, friends.